Welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast, the podcast that helps aircraft owners and aviation businesses learn and understand the complex world of aviation insurance and risk management. From the basic principles of aviation insurance to risk management techniques and updates on the aviation insurance market, the Aviation Insurance Podcast is your guide to traverse the world of aviation insurance. Now, here's your host, Tim Bonnell.
Welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast, where we talk about all things aviation insurance, safety, risk management, and a little bit more. And today I'm excited to welcome a guest who represents some organizations that make a difference in aviation, and excited to hear more about what they do and how they serve others, because I think making a positive impact through aviation in our companies is a absolutely important thing to do. So I'd like to welcome Kerrick Tweedy, who is the founder, executive director of the Service-Oriented Aviation Readiness Organization, also known as SOAR, is also the CEO of the International Association of Missionary Aviation. So following a 26-year career in insurance software development, good for you, the Lord provided a clear path to Kerrick and his wife, Connie, to begin a new ministry preparing missionary candidates to serve full-time in missionary aviation, which I can only imagine is quite the task with all that can be faced in those situations. Kerrick and his wife founded SOAR in October of 2011, where they both continue to serve as full-time leaders. Kerrick served on the IAMA board of directors as secretary for nearly 9 years and was actively engaged in events and assisting the CEO with other behind-the-scenes IT administrative functions. So it was a natural progression that as the former CEO transitioned out, that Kerrick stepped into that role and has been serving as the organization IAMA's CEO since January of 2023. So Kerrick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tim. And quite a mouthful there on the organization names and all the acronyms. So it's pretty easy. So typically we go by SOAR and then IAMA for the association.
Yeah, and that's typical for aviation, right? Lots of long titles and abbreviations. So, well, just on that, you can speak to SOAR or IAMA, but tell our listeners about IAMA or SOAR, what you do, who you serve, in a little more detail there.
Yeah, and they kind of go hand in hand, so I appreciate that. As you read in my bio, this isn't actually something that I would have anticipated a little over 12 years ago of happening, but as said, we actually have insurance in common, and so I spent my entire first part of my career in insurance software development. So did that, and the aviation side really came as a potential hobby. My wife, I'd been traveling internationally quite a bit with the insurance development company, and then my wife decided maybe a hobby would be good. We thought I was going to stay home a little more, so she got me a gift certificate, and happy to report back in the day, I was an average FAA pilot. Took me 70 hours in 2 years because I didn't stop traveling with kids and just nights and weekends and before work and after work, and trying to work on getting my private pilot certificate back in the day. And so I think just God ultimately used all of those things, the experience in aviation and what it took to do that. My wife and I had already been involved in our local church, going on mission trips and short-term kinds of things internationally. Personally, we'd been on a kind of a debt-free journey ourselves, being part of a tech startup. And so we kind of say that at some point, God put all those things in a bucket, stirred them up, and said, I've got something new for you. We call it kind of our Abraham moment, where he called us to a land and a people we do not know. And so that was the founding of SOAR, and we found ourselves coming alongside kind of the next generation and helping those who wouldn't follow the traditional path to mission aviation. They weren't in a position to go back to a 4 or 5 year program, go through the whole thing. Maybe they were farther along in life, already had families. And so then SOAR provided them a way first to step into missions and then to focus on their training. And so I went back, and as I was looking with the board, went back and looked, and as part of a technology startup, what I didn't know I was learning is just being part of that was we joked about back in the day, when you get into an industry or something, you just do what the big boys do. And so I didn't know I was learning that. You show up at all the events. But so for us in Missionary Aviation, then IAMA represented that trade organization. It was the one that I saw all the Mission Aviation's part of. And so when I was looking and talking to the board, I went back and realized that the fifth check that we wrote for SOAR was our membership from IAMA. And really from that standpoint, jumped in with both feet, started just showing up at all the events, the conferences, and that stuff. And I say kind of in the nonprofit world then, kind of fresh meat. Somebody doesn't normally just show up and volunteer and be there for all the events. And so that was kind of the, my entrance into IAMA and coming alongside, serving, volunteering, and being part of that initially. So.
Yeah. So obviously IAMA serves missionaries and Missionary Aviation. So it's got a number of organizations that are involved in that capacity. I mean, what is the primary mission of IAMA and its members?
Yeah, so from a membership standpoint, the best way I know to describe is all of our members are actively engaged in advancing the gospel throughout the world, and there's a lot of unreached people groups and places that need to hear the name of Christ. And so in that, though, aviation is the tool by which we use to accomplish those goals. And so every member organization is going about their mission and their ministry differently, but aviation is that central tool, and that's what draws us together. And that's really at the point that we want to do things well, we want to do them better, we want to collaborate, we want to avoid duplication of effort. And so assembling together as an association provides us that ability to come together and do that. And so that's really its core purpose of the association is collaboration, working together, reducing efforts, trying to do things that a lot of our smaller members can't afford to do on their own. And we've got some very large organizations, that help lead the industry forward. And so that's really where we come together. That's really the entire purpose. And administratively, it sounds important for me to be the CEO of IAMA. There's one position. That's the CEO position. And then as mentioned earlier in the bio, my wife plays a significant role in that administratively, helping me lead. And then we have a board of 12 members that are helping to lead and collaborate as well and help direct where we need to be going as an association.
Yeah, that's great. And so obviously your members operate in the missions field, around the world. And they're obviously going in and serving this, trying to reach people in different capacities, as you indicated. But what are a few examples maybe of some of those operations specifically conducted by some of your members, aviation related?
Yeah. So when it comes to that kind of activity, I think, primarily it's going to be a support network in a number of ways. It can look humanitarian. And so just when things happen, a number of organizations respond to disasters and things. We, have organizations on the ground in Haiti. And so as those incidents have happened, or the tsunamis that happen, or uprisings and things like that, where we have people that are in harm's way and need to do that. So whether it's bringing in supplies, whether it's bringing in disaster teams to help in those situations, it's also just the connectedness to communities that are not on a road network. We have, incredible amount of people serving kind of in that narrow band of tropical regions from South America all the way through Africa and the islands areas and stuff. And so, that's a significant amount. So just getting people keeping the villages and remote areas connected to the rest of the world, bringing in those resources. It can also look like, 911. And so if there's a medical emergency and people need to be transported out of these remote places, it can look like Uber, and so I heard one of our missionary pilots say that sometimes he's FedEx, sometimes he's Uber, sometimes he's 911. And so those are the kinds of things really where our members come together. ultimately in reaching their ultimate mission. But it's those types of activities. Sometimes it's economic development and helping those remote places bring goods and services. Maybe their purpose going in is bringing people into those remote areas, but maybe they're helping to haul cargo out and keep those people. So economic development. A lot of times it can be government relations. And so the ability for governments to be able to connect and get to places, because sometimes mission aviation is the primary mode of transportation. There's been times in our past where, and probably some current operations where mission aviation is actually operating as a entity for a country to provide air service in some situations. So it can be very vast in how that takes shapes, but those are some of the primary means by which we accomplish our mission.
Yeah, I mean, an aviation connects, people. It connects, like you talked about, the remote. It's there for quick response, medical, all those needs, and so it's a really unique position you and the members are in. Obviously, with membership, doing these kind of operations, landing in places that don't have a normal paved airport, and these type of things. There's unique aviation challenges that have to be discussed and thought of, and the training there, I'm sure, which is why it takes a lot of time with and what the goals you were trying to accomplish with SOAR and that you're doing with SOAR. But so, do you encounter or participate in any like safety, risk management, or have any like insurance issues? Throughout your membership in the IAMA and doing those kind of operations, are there activities you guys do to try to work together to share information, mitigate risk, that type of stuff?
Yeah, one of our members is a group called Mission Safety International. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And so in that role, over 40 years ago, Joe Hopkins started Mission Safety International. And so a lot of our IAMA members are then members of MSI, and through that process. And so MSI leads in safety seminars. Many of us are part of a program that they helped start with locked-in companies as the broker called AirMap. We have over 30 member organizations that are members of MSI, and most of them are IAMA members. And so we come together in that realm for insurance. As part of that program, then, is an oversight. We have to go through safety audits every 3 years, and those are ways that the organization helps from a safety perspective to help leading us forward. One of the things in that is our safety audits might look different than some organizations where it's kind of a pass or fail. Ours are actually in a way to lead us forward, and think of just culture and things like that MSI is able to come along. They bring in experts from aviation. A lot of their volunteers are out of the corporate world, directors of safety at Delta and Northwest and things like that have seen what we're trying to do and will come alongside, be participants in those audits. And the audits are actually even more, especially because the harsh reality of where we operate and isolated nature of our teams and so forth. They consider more than just looking at our aircraft and our shops and our tools and things like that, and actually help audit the people. How are the people doing? How are their relationships among the group that's operating together in these isolated places? Even how are the couples doing? Because stress at home, stress in the organization, stress at work can lead to safety issues. And so MSI does an incredible job through this process and in helping administer the AirMap program. And so they go around the country and even around the world and do safety seminars in that process. And so many of our members host those and invite their communities to be part of that. So safety management systems, they're working on those. We all have safety manuals that go along, or operations manual for flight, for maintenance. And then we just recently launched, and I'm on the steering committee of our Mission Aviation Folklore. initiative. And so we just launched that. We've got operating agreements in place, and we're partnering with Truth Data to do the analysis. We're uploading sample data, working through that. And then we're actually even looking at MSI becoming members of the ASIAS program so that we can get advantage of all of that data. So over the last 12, 15 years, we've really, moved that emphasis towards safety, towards continuous improvement in the process. And so IAMA is another way that we can help bring people together. And even with our upcoming conference, a significant amount of that effort will be on safety focus as well.
No, that's great. I mean, a lot of people probably have this image of, missionary aviation organizations just flying in a bush plane with no radios and, not putting much thought into the safety or the all those other factors. And so I think it's really encouraging from a risk management perspective to hear, a lot of the, airline level and high-end corporate level safety initiatives being taken on by the aviation missionary organizations, which is great because they're obviously operating in some of the most challenging environments. At the same time, you just don't hear of a lot of, major, certainly catastrophic crashes within the customer. Obviously, things happen, but it seems to be obviously producing fruit and resulting in safe and quality operations, accomplishing the missions, that it sets out to do, which is pretty amazing. So that's a big kudos to.
Yeah, one of the things we, look at and in the GA structure, if you will, corporate aviation probably most closely resembles mission aviation. If we think about, and we talked about earlier about just what aviation does and kind of those hard to reach places. Well, for us in corporate aviation, in that world, it's about getting into those smaller airports. It's about getting customers and business owners and things. And they're not flying into the hub areas. They're flying, into smaller cities and things. And so if you think about corporate aviation pilots, they're landing on shorter runways typically than they would. They're worried about their takeoff weight and V1 and all those kinds of things. And so we are constantly looking at accident rates and things like that and seeing and kind of following and saying, corporate aviation is doing it well. They've become much safer. And how do we apply those same things that they're learning and apply those to what we're doing? But yeah, I think it's interesting, in mission aviation, there could be that, that image of bush, pilots, cowboys, kinds of things. And that's as far removed from who we're trying to be and where we've developed over the last really 20 plus years even in the way. And one of the things we're looking at is future technology as well. How do those things play into what we're doing? The safety aspects of those as well. And so there's a high emphasis on safety and doing things well, and looking at how the aviation industry is developing and how we can be part of that and advancing safety in our culture and everything else.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, there's already a good partnership providing some solutions on the insurance front, but is there any other way that the aviation insurance industry could be better serving your members?
I saw that question, earlier and trying to think about, I think, as we continue to manage that, our AirMap program, and people who understand, what we're trying to accomplish. And so, if you look at our normal policies, in the space before we took insurance with AirMap, there's always these exclusions of war and stuff like that most of us in the U.S. don't have to worry about the policies and terrorism and things like that. And so every time we renew now with our policies and where we operate, we're consistently having to look at those kinds of things because we can't exclude those kinds of coverages and things. And so depending on what's going on in certain areas of the world and in the economics. So I think an understanding, and if there are carriers that are in aviation and interested in kind of reaching out, that, there could be opportunities for somebody to engage in something like the AirMap program, take a percentage of the risk, join in the pool that spreads that risk out among other organizations. I don't know. That's kind of a tough question, but that's the first thing that comes to mind is people who understand. We've had a couple of carriers that are part of that have been longstanding members who, you launch a program like this 15-something years ago. And I think the other thing, too, to realize is that mission aviation, in the face of that, is changing in the type of equipment that we operate. And so, back in the day, more 182s, 206s and stuff. But when you start switching more of our primary stuff to Kodiaks and Caravans and King Airs, an accident or an incident isn't a couple $100,000 issue anymore. You're talking about, multi-million-dollar kinds of claims and stuff. And so we've been doing very well. Our safety continues to move forward. But I think just other like-minded organizations who might understand the potential impact of what we're trying to do around the world, and who might be interested in participating from that perspective.
And so if people wanted to learn more or find additional information about IAMA or SOAR, where should they go to find you?
Yeah, so the easiest thing for IAMA is just IAMA.team, IAMA.team is our new website. You can get a list of our members from the site. And I should mention, too, that we also have sponsoring members. Sponsoring members are those who understand what we're doing, maybe not actively participating directly in mission aviation, but an opportunity to be supportive of that. And so we've got 10 or 11 sponsoring members right now. And so if somebody wanted to support us in what we're doing, they could apply to be a sponsoring member. And you'll see everything from high-end aviation companies, engine companies, overhaul facilities, FBOs, insurance folks involved, whether brokers or agencies involved as well. And so that would be just the IAMA.team. And might also just pitch our upcoming conference in Bolivar, Missouri. Every year we host our annual IAMA conference, and we typically jump around to other member organizations. And so this year SOAR actually has agreed to host. And so you can, under our news page there, you can look at that and see kind of the program. And we take that opportunity also to do, I'm really excited about a generational study that we're doing, because we've talked about what does it take, and SOAR and a lot of the training programs are experiencing the challenge of bringing the next generation into mission aviation. The journey is hard. It's a 7 to 10 year journey to get the education and training and experience that you need to actually get to the mission field. And so as we look at bringing the next generation on, and so we're going to be doing some generational studies that we commissioned a survey and focus groups last year. We're going to be getting that report. We're going to do just general leadership development as well on one of the days, and spend time, again, organizationally saying, how do we work well? How do we do things better? And so we're bringing in a consultant to talk about the table group's 6 types of working genius, and how do we work well together? How do we do that better? And we kicked that off last year. We're going to do more of a deep dive there. And then our inward-facing kind of mission aviation stuff. We've got a group out at JARS has developed a flight book called Flight Span, and it's a specific kind of 4-flight companion, if you will, specifically for mission aviation pilots and all the things that they have to deal with in these remote areas. So, you can really start with the IAMA link, and you can get to any of our member organizations, including SOAR, from that perspective.
That's great. Now, just one question that sparked is, I don't think people realize how much goes into learning to be in the aviation missionary field. But my understanding is many of the pilots have to have a very strong mechanical background or training, in addition to all the other many, many factors that go into that. Can you elaborate on any of that, over 7 years, because there's aviation and there's the missionary aspects, both that go into that education, correct?
Right. Yeah, so that, that 7 to 10 year journey we talk about, and some of that could be undergrad, getting a program, or if they're not going through a formal school process, it could be missions training, Bible training prior to. But traditionally, if somebody wants to go serve as a pilot for mission aviation, then the traditional path has been to also get their A&P. And so many of the schools focus on doing both of that. The organizations are also open to what they would call pilot plus kind of things. And as you get people in second career, if somebody has pilot, appropriate experience as a pilot, but maybe they bring an IT specialty, or maybe they're a teacher, or maybe they've got accounting or electrician or something like that. So if you're thinking second career, it could be pilot plus, where maybe you've got the pilot skills. But for those who are coming typically younger and don't have another skill set to bring along, then typically A&P is that process. And so again, if we think of that kind of that 7 to 10 year journey, you think you go through a normal school, you're going to come out with a commercial rating, maybe a CFI, and so you've got 250, 300 hours. You get an AAP certificate, but have no experience if you went through a 147, or maybe you go through an apprenticeship program and you got 2.5, 3 years of experience. And so then think in the normal industry, in the aviation industry, you really don't have the credentials to start anything or do anything. You're literally just getting in. And so in addition to that, typically our candidates have to get anywhere to 400 to 500 hours of flight time. So they're trying to get through that gap of, if they just get the school level training, then they've got to get additional experience in both flight and maintenance. And so, they have to figure out that gap. And that's one of the things that SOAR is. We help them first step into the mission aviation realm. We work on their training, and then we hold them with us until we can successfully launch them with a mission board, helping to reduce that gap time. But so let's say in the U.S., all right, great. I've got my 400 to 500 hours. I've got my A&P with another experience. I go through evaluations. I get accepted with a mission board. Then typically there's going to be some sort of NDOC or onboarding with any mission organization. So they're going to go through additional training when they get to the mission board. Some programs are 4 or 5 months, some are a year long, get a field assignment. And now guess what? Maybe I've got a language challenge that I have to do. Maybe I'm going to a non-certified FAA country where now I have to fall in line with CASA or ICAO certification. Maybe I have to actually learn the local language well enough to re-examine my maintenance or our flight and now become certified under another accrediting body. And so, and I'm probably going to, as a pilot, I'm probably going to sit right seat for a year, going into these remote strips and being acclimated to where I am in the culture. We have a candidate that came through SOAR, did a 4-year undergrad program. He was a maintenance specialist only, so he spent additional 3 years at SOAR, getting his A&P and the experience there. The organization that they had a 1-year mission program after that. So now we're at 8 years. He went then to the home office to do the NDOC. Their program's about a year. He had some medical challenges as they considered overseas service in the countries that they could serve. And so that they stayed at home office another 2 years. So he's at 10 years. They got accepted to a field program in the Philippines, and they're going to spend the first 2 years in language and culture acquisition before he actually starts turning wrenches on aircraft. And so their journey from starting undergrad to actively engaged and being productive in the mission field was a 12-year journey. We have young people call SOAR all the time, and I say, we're really having a 20-year conversation. That's kind of the minimum in. And we're looking, are there ways that we can do as we talk about bringing on the next generation? Are there ways, can we do more training, more ab initio kind of training within the organizations, with our programs? Can we, work through some of the other challenges to get them to the field earlier, do some field training? And so we have challenges ahead of us, just like, we have pilot shortages, mechanic shortages here in the U.S. We have those same challenges, but now we've got such a reduced pool of people, that would move into this side of aviation.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, and just I'm sure our viewers and listeners are, if they didn't already have a really good idea of what went into Missionary Aviation and the services your members perform, that they're probably blown away at the amount of education, training, the intentionality with safety, risk management, and training, all which are critical into providing these key operations in these remote areas. And so, Kerrick, I just want to thank you for taking your time today, right ahead of your conference that happens here in a few weeks, to share more about this organization and how you guys address safety and risk management and interact with the insurance business. And, thank you, obviously, to you and your members just for serving the world using aviation to make a positive and lasting difference in the lives of others. So thank you for your time, and thank you for what you do and who you serve.
Well, thanks, Tim, for the opportunity, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks, that sounds like.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So that's all for this episode. Join us again next time as we continue navigating the waypoints in aviation insurance. Until then, enjoy clear skies and unlimited visibility.
Thanks for listening to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. If you found this episode of value, please share it with someone who would benefit from this information. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss any new episodes, and to help our show have more impact. This episode is brought to you by Aeris Insurance Solutions, your flight plan for navigating the turbulence of aviation insurance. For more information, visit aerisinsurance.com. That is www.aerisinsurance.com. Disclaimer: these episodes are for educational purposes only, and due to the changing regulatory and legal nature of the business, some information may change over time. Having a well-educated and experienced aviation insurance broker on your team is an absolute requirement to success in business and for managing your aircraft and aviation business risks.